Ever wonder why some people achieve their dreams while others don't? The secret lies in embodying your future self today. Your brain can't distinguish between actual achievement and consistent rehearsal. By acting as if you've already become that person, your subconscious creates matching opportunities. How start with small daily habits that mirror your ideal self. Identify one behavior to implement today. Remember, you become what you consistently, do not what you occasionally wish for. In the next while, you will learn how to act like the person you want to become. The power of self-image. Have you ever noticed that successful individuals carry themselves differently? They walk with purpose, speak with conviction, and radiate an energy that draws others toward them. This isn't coincidence or good fortune. It's the manifestation of a powerful self-image they've cultivated within themselves. Consider this fundamental truth. You will never rise beyond the vision you hold of yourself in your mind. The person you believe yourself to be sets the boundaries for everything you'll achieve in life. When you look in the mirror, who do you see staring back? Is it someone destined for greatness, or someone limited by doubt and fear? Your answer to this question carries more weight than any external factor in determining your ultimate destiny. You create this powerful transformation by first identifying the exact person you wish to become, not just in accomplishments, but in character, demeanor, and spirit. Visualize this ideal version of yourself with crystal clarity. How does this person stand, speak, react to challenges? What values guide their decisions? Once you've established this vision, you must begin living as though you've already become this person. This isn't deception, it's strategic alignment of your current actions with your desired outcomes. Begin practicing the mannerisms, making the decisions, and adopting the mindset of your ideal self. When faced with choices, ask yourself, what would the person I desire to become do in this situation? Then summon the courage to act accordingly, even when it feels unnatural at first. The story of Edmund Graves illustrates this principle perfectly. He found himself working as a mid-level banker with dreams of revolutionizing the financial industry. Although lacking connections and exceptional resources, Graves noticed that the banking executives he admired shared certain qualities. They dressed impeccably, spoke deliberately, and carried themselves with quiet confidence. Rather than waiting for promotion to adopt these traits, Graves began embodying them immediately, investing in quality suits despite his modest salary, practicing articulate speech patterns, and carrying himself with the dignified demeanor of someone already leading the industry. Within 3 years, Graves had risen to regional director, with colleagues later remarking they had always perceived him as executive material long before his title reflected this status. Are you currently projecting the image of the person you aspire to become? Do your daily actions align with the future you envision, or do you tell yourself that someday after you've achieved success, you'll begin acting the part? The painful truth many never grasp is that success flows toward those who embody it before external circumstances reflect it. But perhaps you're thinking, isn't this just pretending? Shouldn't I be authentic? Here's the crucial distinction. You're not fabricating qualities you don't possess. You're cultivating attributes that already exist within you, yet remain underdeveloped. The seeds of your future self are present in you now, waiting for nourishment through deliberate action and persistent focus. When you consistently act in alignment with your ideal self-image, something remarkable begins to occur. The gap between who you are and who you wish to become gradually narrows until it disappears entirely. Your subconscious mind, unable to distinguish between deeply imagined experience and reality, begins reshaping your automatic behaviors to match your conscious performances. What specific aspect of your self-image requires immediate elevation? Which quality of your desired future self could you begin embodying today, even before external circumstances validate this choice? Your daily habits form your future self. Consider for a moment the astonishing power contained within a single day. 24 hours might seem insignificant when measured against a lifetime, yet within each day lies the foundation of your destiny, the person you will become. 1 year, 5 years, or a decade from now isn't determined by momentous decisions or rare opportunities. It's shaped by the seemingly minor actions you repeat daily. These consistent patterns, your habits, are silently determining your trajectory toward either greatness or mediocrity. Each time you perform an action, you reinforce neural pathways in your brain, making that behavior increasingly automatic. Dogmatically, this process works. With unwavering neutrality, it will just as readily cement excellence as it will mediocrity, depending solely on what you choose to practice. You transform yourself not through occasional bursts of motivation or temporary commitments, but through the steady accumulation of small, deliberate choices made consistently over time. Success isn't achieved through sporadic heroic efforts, but through mundane actions performed with extraordinary consistency. Begin by identifying the specific habits that characterize the person you aspire to become. Does this person rise early, maintain physical discipline, read voraciously, express gratitude daily, make meaningful connections? Whatever these patterns may be, implement them immediately into your daily routine. Not because they'll bring instant results, but because they'll gradually reshape your identity into alignment with your aspirations. During the 1968 Olympic training season, Australian swimmer Margaret Thwaite found herself consistently seconds behind her competitors. Rather than making dramatic changes to her technique, she made one modest adjustment to her habits, arriving 30 minutes before each scheduled practice. This additional time allowed her to perform specialized breathing exercises and mental rehearsal. While teammates noticed nothing remarkable in this routine, Thwaite maintained this discipline for 11 months without exception. By the time the Olympic trials arrived, these accumulated minutes had transformed her performance, elevating her from team alternate to gold medal contender. Are you waiting for motivation to strike before establishing the habits of your ideal self, or have you recognized that action precedes motivation, not the other way around? When will you decide that today's decisions matter more than yesterday's limitations or tomorrow's aspirations? Just as water gradually reshapes stone, not through force but through persistence, your habits, even those that seem insignificant in isolation, will ultimately define you. The challenge lies in maintaining these patterns long enough to witness their transformative effect. Most abandon promising habits before this crucial threshold, never experiencing the compound interest of consistent action. Start with habits so small they seem trivial. Read 5 pages each morning. Walk 10 minutes daily. These modest beginnings might seem inconsequential, but their power lies in consistency rather than intensity. As these patterns become embedded in your identity, gradually increase their scope until they match the full expression of your desired self. Remember that excellence isn't accomplished through occasional heroic efforts, but through unremarkable actions performed with remarkable consistency. The distance between your current self and your aspirational identity will be crossed through thousands of seemingly insignificant choices made daily. What single habit could you implement tomorrow morning that would most directly connect you with the person you're determined to become? Which daily action, if performed consistently for 1 year, would make the greatest difference in your trajectory? That brings us to the courage to step outside your comfort zone. Every meaningful achievement in human history has required someone to venture beyond the boundaries of what felt comfortable and familiar. That promotion you desire, that business you dream of launching, that relationship you wish to build, all exist just beyond the edges of your current comfort zone, waiting for you to summon the courage to step across this invisible threshold. Growth and comfort simply cannot coexist. This fundamental truth explains why so many people remain trapped in mediocrity despite possessing extraordinary potential. They mistake temporary comfort for genuine fulfillment, never realizing that the very discomfort they avoid is precisely what would transform them into the person they aspire to become. You accelerate personal transformation by deliberately seeking situations that stretch your capabilities and challenge your assumptions. Each time you embrace discomfort for the sake of growth, you expand your capacity to handle uncertainty and difficulty. This expansion doesn't merely change what you can do. It fundamentally alters who you are becoming. Begin identifying the specific discomforts currently keeping you from your desired identity. Is it public speaking? Initiating difficult conversations? Making financial investments, learning technical skills? Whatever these growth opportunities may be, Approach them deliberately and consistently, recognizing that temporary discomfort is the price of permanent transformation. British mountaineer Alistair Pennington found himself unable to advance beyond regional climbing competitions despite rigorous physical training. After careful self-assessment, he recognized his limitation wasn't physical but psychological. He avoided certain technically challenging routes that carried greater risk of public failure. Rather than continuing his comfortable training regimen, Pennington deliberately restructured his approach, attempting only routes that induced anxiety and uncertainty. For 6 months, he endured constant failure, public struggles, and the psychological strain of performing beneath his previous standard. This deliberate discomfort eventually expanded his capabilities beyond what incremental improvements could have achieved, ultimately earning him recognition among the elite climbers of his generation. Are you currently arranging your life to maximize comfort or growth? When was the last time you deliberately placed yourself in a situation where failure was not only possible but probable? How much potential remains dormant within you, waiting for the catalyst of necessary discomfort? The paradox of personal development is that we must become comfortable with discomfort itself. The sensation of uncertainty, vulnerability, and temporary incompetence, feelings most people spend their lives avoiding, are actually reliable indicators that you're moving in the right direction. These feelings signal the expansion of your capabilities rather than reasons to retreat. Start with small discomforts. Speaking up in meetings, approaching new professional connections, learning foundational skills in areas that intimidate you. As your tolerance increases, gradually expand the scope of challenges you're willing to embrace. Soon, situations that once seemed terrifying will become merely challenging, and challenges that once seemed insurmountable will become routine. Remember that courage isn't the absence of fear, but rather the decision that something else, your growth, your purpose, your potential contribution, matters more than your temporary emotional comfort. The greatest regrets in life rarely come from the risks we took, but from the growth opportunities we avoided for fear of discomfort or failure. What specific discomfort have you been avoiding that, if embraced, would most directly transform you into the person you aspire to become? What's the smallest step you could take tomorrow to begin facing this necessary challenge? Next, we explore surrounding yourself with excellence. No individual achieves extraordinary success in isolation. This fundamental principle has been demonstrated throughout human history, yet many still attempt to reach their highest potential through solitary effort. The truth remains evident. Your environment, particularly the people with whom you consistently interact, shapes your thinking, influences your decisions, and ultimately determines your trajectory. This principle of environmental influence operates with unwavering consistency, whether you consciously direct it or not. Your mind gradually adopts the predominant attitudes, perspectives, and ambitions of those with whom you spend the most time. This process occurs subtly, often beyond your conscious awareness. Yet its impact on your development is profound and inescapable. You accelerate your transformation by deliberately cultivating relationships with individuals who embody the qualities you wish to develop. This strategic approach to relationship building isn't manipulative. It's an acknowledgement that humans naturally grow toward the standards present in their immediate environment. By consciously elevating this environment, you provide yourself the optimal conditions for becoming your ideal self. Begin evaluating your current social and professional circles with unflinching honesty. Are you surrounded by individuals who challenge you to expand your thinking, elevate your standards, and pursue meaningful growth? Or do your closest associations reinforce limitations, encourage complacency, and normalize mediocrity? Once you've conducted this assessment, take deliberate steps to increase your exposure to excellence while compassionately creating distance from influences that limit your potential. Does your current environment reflect where you are or where you're determined to go? Have you become the average of the 5 people with whom you spend the most time? What deliberate adjustments to your associations would most dramatically accelerate your development? This principle leads into the idea of the mastermind principle, the exponential power created when minds unite in harmony toward shared objectives, represents one of the most powerful applications of environmental influence. By creating or joining such alliances, you gain access not only to expanded knowledge and resources, but to the invisible current of mutual inspiration and accountability that naturally accelerates each member's progress. Begin creating this elevated environment by seeking mentors who already embody your aspirational identity, joining communities organized around excellence in your field, and initiating regular interactions with peers who share your commitment to growth while bringing complementary perspectives. Remember that meaningful connection with one person operating at an extraordinary level will impact your development more profoundly than casual association with dozens of individuals settled into mediocrity. What single relationship, if established or deepened, would most dramatically accelerate your transformation into the person you aspire to become? Which current association, if limited, would remove the greatest obstacle to your continued growth? But the journey isn't without challenge, requiring persistence through adversity. Every meaningful achievement in human history has encountered significant resistance. This universal pattern reveals an uncomfortable truth. Adversity isn't merely an occasional obstacle on the path to becoming your ideal self. It's an essential component of the transformation process itself. The capacity to maintain your course when faced with difficulty often determines your ultimate destiny more decisively than talent, opportunity, or initial advantages. This resilience in the face of inevitable challenges represents the crucial difference between those who merely desire transformation and those who actually experience it. Temporary motivation and fair-weather commitment may initiate change, but only persistent action sustained through difficulty will complete the journey from aspiration to embodiment of your ideal self. You develop this transformative persistence not by avoiding challenges, but by reframing your relationship with adversity itself. Rather than viewing obstacles as interruptions to your progress, recognize them as strengthening mechanisms necessary. Resistance that builds the character and capacity required to sustain success once achieved. Like muscle tissue that grows stronger through the deliberate stress of resistance training, your capabilities expand most significantly when pushing against meaningful opposition. Begin cultivating persistence by establishing clear, compelling reasons for becoming your ideal self that transcend momentary comfort or convenience. When your motivation connects to values and purposes larger than yourself, it becomes significantly easier to maintain momentum through periods of difficulty and doubt. Additionally, develop specific strategies for managing predictable challenges, energy fluctuations, criticism from others, temporary failures, plateaus in progress, so these common obstacles don't derail your consistent action. Brazilian footballer Ronaldo Carvalho suffered a devastating injury that doctors unanimously declared career-ending. Rather than accepting this assessment, Carvalho developed an unprecedented rehabilitation regimen working through excruciating pain for 18 months, while teammates and former coaches progressively abandoned hope for his return. During this period of isolation, Carvalho transformed not only his physical capabilities, but his fundamental approach to the sport. Upon his eventual return, which medical experts had deemed impossible, his enhanced technical precision and strategic understanding elevated him from talented player to transformative presence in the sport, ultimately earning him recognition among the era's elite athletes. When was the last time difficulty strengthened, rather than diminished your commitment? How quickly do you currently abandon worthy pursuits when progress becomes challenging? What specific adversity are you currently facing that, if properly leveraged, could become the catalyst for your most significant growth? Remember that persistence isn't merely continuing along the same path regardless of results. It's maintaining commitment to your ultimate objective while flexibly adapting methods based on feedback. This nuanced approach balances unwavering dedication to your aspirational identity with a willingness to adjust specific tactics as circumstances require. Develop practical resilience by creating support systems that sustain your momentum during inevitable challenges. These might include accountability partnerships, regular review of your most compelling motivations, strategic breaks that prevent burnout without sacrificing momentum, and deliberate study of others who have overcome similar obstacles on their transformation journey. What current challenge, if overcome through persistent effort rather than avoided, would most dramatically accelerate your development into the person you aspire to become? What specific system could you implement to maintain consistent action toward your aspiration, regardless of temporary emotional states or external circumstances? Before we can effectively embody our future selves, we need crystalline clarity, defining your future self with precision. Have you ever noticed that truly exceptional individuals possess an unusually clear picture of who they are and where they're headed? This clarity isn't coincidental. It's the essential foundation upon which all meaningful achievement is built. Without a precise vision of your destination, even the most determined effort often leads nowhere in particular. Many drift through life responding to whatever circumstances present themselves, never taking full command of their direction. They harbor vague notions about success or happiness without defining these concepts in actionable terms. This ambiguity inevitably produces mediocre results regardless of the effort invested or talents possessed. You create transformative clarity by engaging in deliberate, detailed visioning of your ideal future self. This process requires moving beyond generic aspirations towards specific definition, rather than merely wanting success. Define precisely what success means for you in relationships, contribution, financial terms, skill development, and personal fulfillment. Document these specifications with rigor, creating a blueprint detailed enough that someone else could understand exactly who you're becoming. Begin this clarity-building process by isolating yourself from distractions for several hours with the sole purpose of defining your aspirational identity. Ask penetrating questions. What specific capabilities would your ideal self possess? What daily activities would fill their schedule? What impact would they make on others? What standards would they maintain? What environments would they occupy? Record these specifications in vivid detail, then refine them through regular review and reflection until your vision achieves crystalline clarity. Throughout the 1950s, Italian civic architect Marco Visconti found himself producing competent but unremarkable designs, securing sufficient commissions but never breaking through to projects that truly excited his creative passion. During a period of frustration, Visconti retreated to his family's countryside home for 3 weeks, where he meticulously documented his ideal professional future, sketching the specific types of structures he wished to design, the collaborative relationships he wanted to build, the technical innovations he hoped to pioneer, and even the publications in which he aspired to be featured. Upon returning to his practice, Visconti declined projects inconsistent with this vision despite their financial appeal, while creating speculative designs aligned with his ideal future. Within 14 months, this clarity-driven approach attracted precisely the opportunities he had envisioned, establishing him among the most distinctive architects of his generation. Have you defined your aspirational identity with sufficient precision to recognize opportunities that align with it? Could a stranger understand exactly who you're becoming, based on your current definition? Are your daily decisions guided by crystalline clarity or vague aspirations? Remember that clarity precedes mastery in every meaningful human endeavor. Without precise definition, your mind lacks the necessary blueprint to construct your ideal future. This definition must extend beyond external achievements to include the internal qualities, values, and standards that will characterize your ideal self. Enhance your vision's clarity through multi-sensory engagement. Don't merely think about your ideal future, but visualize specific scenes. Articulate the exact words your future self would speak. Imagine the environments they would occupy and even select music that embodies the essence of this aspiration. This multidimensional approach creates neural pathways that make your vision increasingly accessible and compelling to your subconscious mind. What specific aspect of your aspirational identity currently lacks sufficient definition? Which area of your life would most benefit from increased clarity regarding your ideal future self? Clarity is powerful but meaningless without decisive action. Moving beyond planning to implementation. Have you observed that society celebrates contemplation while achievement requires implementation? Countless individuals possess remarkable insights, brilliant strategies, and detailed plans, yet remain largely unknown because they never translate these mental constructs into tangible action. The gap between knowing and doing represents the most significant barrier separating mediocrity from excellence. This hesitation between thought and action stems from our natural tendency to overvalue preparation while underestimating the learning that emerges only through implementation. We convince ourselves that additional research planning or skill development must precede meaningful action, unaware that this approach often serves primarily to postpone necessary risk and potential discomfort. You bridge this gap through the discipline of immediate implementation, taking concrete action toward your aspirational identity within 24 hours of identifying any opportunity for growth. This commitment to rapid execution doesn't eliminate planning, but rather prevents planning from becoming a substitute for progress. It acknowledges that imperfect action today typically produces greater results than perfect action indefinitely postponed. Begin implementing this principle by identifying one significant action related to your aspirational identity that you could complete within the next day. Perhaps it's submitting an application, publishing your first piece of writing, approaching a potential mentor, or initiating a challenging conversation. Whatever this action might be, commit to completing it before allowing yourself to engage in additional planning or preparation. American publisher Lawrence Mitchell discovered a manuscript that immediately struck him as commercially promising, despite needing substantial editorial revision. Rather than following the standard procedure of convening committee reviews and conducting market analysis, Mitchell called the author directly negotiated provisional terms and announced the acquisition to his publicity team all within 6 hours of finishing the manuscript. This decisiveness, which colleagues initially criticized as impulsive, secured rights to what became the decade's best-selling biography. When later questioned about his unconventional approach, Mitchell explained that while competitors were still analyzing market potential, he had already initiated promotional activities, creating unstoppable momentum. How often do your plans remain unexecuted? What percentage of your knowledge currently remains imprisoned in thought rather than expressed through action? Which aspect of your aspirational identity has suffered most from the gap between what you know and what you've implemented? Remember that action itself generates clarity in ways that planning cannot. The feedback received from implementation, whether success or setback, provides essential information unavailable through contemplation alone. This practical wisdom, acquired only through direct experience, often proves more valuable than the theoretical knowledge that preceded it. What specific action related to your aspirational identity have you been postponing through excessive planning or preparation? What concrete step could you take within the next 24 hours that would move you measurably closer to becoming your ideal self? Embodying your future self means setting the foundation of exceptional achievement. Have you noticed that truly remarkable individuals maintain different standards than their contemporaries? They reject work others would consider adequate, speak with precision where others accept ambiguity, and remain engaged when others would justifiably rest. This distinction in personal standards, more than talent, opportunity, or resources, explains the extraordinary gap between exceptional and ordinary results. Most operate according to standards established by their immediate environment, working sufficiently to maintain employment, behaving adequately to preserve relationships, developing skills enough to perform acceptably in their chosen domain. This approach guarantees mediocrity regardless of potential, because conformity to prevailing standards can never produce exceptional outcomes. You elevate your trajectory by deliberately establishing personal standards that far exceed environmental expectations. This process begins with careful examination of your aspirational identity, identifying the specific standards this ideal version of yourself would maintain, regarding work quality, personal conduct, skill development, contribution to others, and management of physical and mental resources. Begin implementing elevated standards by selecting one domain particularly relevant to your aspirational identity. Perhaps it's the quality of your professional work, your physical fitness, your communication precision, or your follow-through on commitments. Whatever area you select, define standards so specific they can be objectively measured. Then maintain these standards even when circumstances would provide reasonable justification for compromise. Japanese ceramic artist Hiroshi Tanaka produced commercially successful pieces that received positive critical reception. Yet Tanaka himself remained privately dissatisfied, sensing untapped potential in his work. Rather than continuing along this commercially viable path, Tanaka established an unprecedented personal standard, destroying any piece containing even minor imperfections perceptible only to his trained eye, regardless of commercial appeal or time invested. For 11 months, this standard resulted in approximately 70% of his completed works being destroyed dramatically, reducing his income and concerning his peers. However, this unwavering commitment gradually transformed both his technical precision and artistic vision, eventually establishing him among the most significant artists of his generation. With pieces commanding 10 times his previous market value, what area of your life currently operates according to standards determined by your environment rather than your aspirational identity? Where have you been accepting good enough when excellence was possible? What specifically would your ideal self demand that your current self considers optional? Remember that elevated standards initially appear unreasonable to those accustomed to prevailing norms. Expect resistance, both external criticism and internal rationalization, when you begin maintaining standards that exceed conventional expectations. This resistance doesn't indicate that your standards are inappropriate. Rather, it confirms you're establishing truly transformative expectations. Implement your elevated standards through specific measurable criteria that eliminate subjective assessment. These objective benchmarks prevent the subtle compromises that gradually erode exceptional standards. Additionally, create accountability systems that make maintaining these standards easier than abandoning them, such as public commitments, regular review processes, or partnerships with others maintaining similar expectations. What single standard, if elevated immediately, would most dramatically accelerate your development into your aspirational identity? What specific measurable criteria could you establish to ensure consistent maintenance of this standard regardless of circumstances? We also touched upon strategic relationships, leveraging connection for transformation. Have you recognized that the most significant catalyst for personal transformation often comes through strategic relationships? Throughout history, individuals who experienced extraordinary development trace their evolution to specific connections that challenged their thinking, expanded their perspective, or modeled alternative possibilities. This pattern reveals an overlooked truth: becoming your ideal self requires not just personal discipline, but deliberate cultivation of transformative relationships. Many approach relationships passively, allowing proximity, convenience, or circumstance to determine their closest associations. They fail to recognize that certain connections possess exponentially greater potential to accelerate their development toward their aspirational identity. This passive approach to relationship building virtually guarantees slower growth than actively curating connections aligned with your development goals. You maximize your transformation by strategically developing 5 specific types of relationships: mentors who have already achieved what you aspire to accomplish, peers committed to similar growth trajectories, students who benefit from your current knowledge, rivals whose accomplishments stretch your perceived limitations, and connectors who expand your network beyond your current boundaries. Begin implementing this approach by identifying specific individuals in each category who could potentially accelerate your development. Research their background, study their work, and create genuine opportunities for connection based on authentic interest in their perspective, rather than merely seeking personal advantage. Approach these potential relationships with clear intentions about the mutual value you hope to create through association. British physicist Eleanor Hammond found herself consistently producing competent research while holding a respectable position at a university. Yet despite her capabilities, Hammond recognized that her work lacked the creative breakthrough potential she aspired to achieve. Rather than focusing exclusively on enhancing her technical skills, Hammond deliberately restructured her professional relationships, building connections with researchers, applying physics principles in diverse fields, including astronomy, material science, and theoretical mathematics. She allocated 3 hours weekly exclusively to fostering these cross-disciplinary relationships through correspondence, laboratory visits, and collaborative discussions. Within 18 months, this strategic approach to relationship building generated novel applications for her existing expertise, leading to publications that established Hammond among the pioneering researchers integrating previously disparate scientific domains. What specific relationship, if developed, would most dramatically accelerate your transformation toward your aspirational identity? Which current association may be limiting your growth through reinforcement of outdated perspectives or standards? How deliberately have you curated your professional and personal connections? Remember that strategic relationship building isn't manipulative when approached with genuine respect and commitment to mutual benefit. The most valuable connections emerge through authentic engagement rather than transactional networking. Additionally, recognize that meaningful relationships often develop gradually through consistent micro-interactions rather than dramatic initial encounters. Enhance your relationship development through systematic investment in others' success before requesting their input in your journey. This might include thoughtfully sharing resources relevant to their interests, providing genuine acknowledgement of their contributions, connecting them with relevant opportunities, or offering assistance with their projects. These investments build relational capital that makes future requests for guidance or collaboration more welcome. Which potential mentor currently beyond your immediate network could provide perspective most relevant to your aspirational identity? What specific approach could create an authentic connection with this individual based on mutual interest rather than one-sided benefit? As we move forward, it's essential to speak about aligning your inner and outer worlds. Have you observed that truly extraordinary individuals possess a remarkable congruence between their public presentation and private conduct? This alignment isn't coincidental. It represents the culmination of deliberate character development that eliminates the exhausting compartmentalization many maintain between their various life domains. This integrated identity allows unrestricted access to their full capabilities regardless of context or circumstance. Many attempt to become different people in different environments, professional versus personal, public versus private, family versus social. This fragmentation creates internal conflict that constantly depletes mental and emotional resources, while preventing the profound depth of character development possible only through consistent alignment of values and behavior across all life domains. You develop this transformative integration by first identifying the core values and standards that define your aspirational identity, then systematically implementing these principles across every life domain rather than contextually adjusting your behavior to match. This approach initially creates friction in environments accustomed to your compartmentalized persona, but ultimately produces a profound authenticity that enhances your impact in every relationship and endeavor. Begin implementing integration by selecting one core value central to your aspirational identity that you currently express inconsistently across different life domains. Perhaps you demonstrate exceptional integrity in professional contexts, but permit minor compromises in personal finance, maintain impeccable accountability with clients, but allow slippage in personal commitments, or demonstrate remarkable compassion toward colleagues while exercising limited patience with family members. Whatever inconsistency you identify, develop specific practices that establish this value with equal strength across all contexts. Richard Harrington achieved notable professional success while maintaining sharp separation between his working persona and personal identity. Professionally, Harrington demonstrated remarkable creativity and innovative thinking that clients valued highly. Yet in personal and family contexts, he operated according to conventional patterns established during his traditional upbringing. Following a period of reflection prompted by growing dissatisfaction, Harrington recognized this compartmentalization as the source of his limited fulfillment despite external success. He methodically identified specific domains where his creative potential remained unexpressed, particularly in parenting approaches, community involvement, and personal pursuits, and systematically applied the innovative thinking previously reserved for professional contexts across these areas. This integration initially created discomfort among those accustomed to his compartmentalized identity, but ultimately produced not only greater personal fulfillment, but enhanced professional capability as insights from previously separated domains cross-pollinated. Where does your current behavior vary significantly depending on context? Which aspects of your aspirational identity express inconsistently across different life domains? What specific value, if integrated throughout your life, would most dramatically accelerate your development? Remember that integration doesn't require identical behavior in every situation, but rather consistent alignment with core values regardless of context. The specific expression of these values naturally adapts to different environments while maintaining underlying integrity. Additionally, recognize that integration often requires temporary discomfort as those accustomed to your compartmentalized identity adjust to more consistent expression of your authentic values. Accelerate integration by creating accountability across previously separated domains. Perhaps by bringing colleagues into personal projects involving family and professional development or applying standards previously reserved for specific contexts across all areas of responsibility. This cross-domain accountability prevents the invisible compromises that typically occur within compartmentalized identities. Which specific aspect of your aspirational identity currently appears only in limited contexts? What practice could you implement immediately to express this quality consistently across all life domains? We must also consciously embrace challenge as the path to growth. Have you noticed that extraordinary individuals consistently move toward challenge rather than away from it? They voluntarily embrace situations that most actively avoid recognizing something that remains invisible to the average person. The direct relation between deliberate discomfort and accelerated development. This counterintuitive approach explains why some individuals evolve rapidly while others remain stagnant despite similar starting capabilities. Most instinctively organize their lives to minimize discomfort, interpreting its presence as an indication that something has gone wrong, rather than recognizing it as the essential catalyst for transformation. This comfort-seeking orientation guarantees developmental plateaus regardless of potential, because meaningful growth occurs primarily at the boundaries of current capability, precisely where discomfort naturally emerges. You accelerate your development by deliberately seeking experiences that challenge your current limitations rather than reinforcing your existing competencies. This strategic approach to growth requires identifying the specific discomforts most relevant to your aspirational identity, whether physical exertion, intellectual confusion, social vulnerability, creative uncertainty, or emotional exposure, and systematically exposing yourself to these growth-promoting tensions. Begin implementing this approach by identifying one specific discomfort directly connected to your aspirational identity that you've been systematically avoiding. Perhaps it's public visibility, financial risk, intellectual challenge, interpersonal conflict, or physical exertion. Whatever this growth-inhibiting avoidance might be, create a specific plan to gradually increase your exposure to this productive discomfort through regular, manageable doses, rather than overwhelming immersion. Swedish industrialist Henrik Lindström maintained respectable business success while consistently delegating public communication responsibilities to colleagues better suited for promotional activities. Despite recognizing that this limitation restricted his company's growth potential, Lindström continued avoiding public visibility until a competitor's aggressive expansion threatened his market position. Rather than maintaining this comfortable limitation, Lindström enrolled in an intensive communication program requiring weekly presentations to increasingly larger audiences. For 6 months, he endured persistent anxiety, frequent criticism, and numerous public failures, discomforts that would have previously seemed intolerable. This deliberate discomfort gradually transformed not only his communication capability, but his fundamental confidence, ultimately enabling expansion into international markets that his previous limitations would have rendered impossible. Which specific discomfort, if deliberately embraced, would most directly accelerate your development toward your aspirational identity? What growth-essential activities have you been avoiding due to the temporary unpleasantness they generate? How might your current comfort-seeking behaviors be limiting your ultimate potential? Remember that productive discomfort differs fundamentally from pointless suffering. The discomfort that catalyzes growth connects directly to capabilities essential for your aspirational identity rather than random hardship with no developmental purpose. Additionally, effective discomfort exposure follows a progressive pattern, gradually increasing intensity as your tolerance expands, rather than overwhelming your adaptive capacity through excessive initial challenge. Enhance your capacity for productive discomfort by developing specific recovery practices that prevent burnout while maintaining developmental momentum. These might include strategic rest periods, reflection routines that extract maximum learning from challenging experiences, celebration of incremental progress, and community support from others pursuing similar growth through deliberate discomfort. What specific discomfort have you been systematically avoiding that directly connects to your aspirational identity? What manageable exposure to this growth-promoting tension could you implement within the next week? Underpinning all these principles is disciplined consistency. This pattern reveals an overlooked truth. Exceptional achievement stems less from momentary inspiration than from sustained implementation. The ability to maintain focused action, regardless of fluctuating circumstances, emotions, or immediate results. Many approach their development through bursts of intense activity, followed by extended disengagement, working feverishly when motivation runs high, but abandoning progress when enthusiasm naturally wanes. This inconsistent approach virtually guarantees limited results regardless of potential, because meaningful development occurs primarily through the compound effect of sustained action rather than isolated episodes of intense effort. You activate the transformative power of consistency by establishing systems that ensure continued progress regardless of your momentary emotional state. This approach acknowledges that motivation naturally fluctuates while creating structures that maintain momentum despite these variations. These systems might include environmental designs that reduce friction for positive behaviors, accountability mechanisms that make consistency easier than abandonment, and identity-based commitments that transcend circumstantial motivation. Begin implementing disciplined consistency by selecting one behavior directly connected to your aspirational identity that you'll perform daily for the next 90 days, regardless of circumstances. This commitment might involve skill development, relationship building, creative production, physical conditioning, or mental discipline. Whatever practice most directly connects to your desired future self, establish this commitment not as a flexible goal, but as a non-negotiable standard, then create robust systems to ensure flawless execution. Indian classical musician Rajiv Mehta demonstrated remarkable technical proficiency while experiencing inconsistent professional recognition. Despite his capabilities, Mehta's practice schedule fluctuated dramatically, intensifying before performances but diminishing substantially during less demanding periods. Following a particularly disappointing concert season, Mehta established an unprecedented standard: 4 hours of deliberate practice daily, irrespective of performance schedule, travel requirements, physical condition, or motivational state. For 7 months, this commitment required significant sacrifice, including pre-dawn sessions during intensive travel periods and modified practice during a brief illness. Yet this relentless consistency produced not only technical refinement, but fundamental artistic breakthroughs that transformed Mehta's reputation among the most respected performers of his generation. What specific behavior, if performed with flawless consistency for the next 90 days, would most directly accelerate your development toward your aspirational identity? What systems could you implement immediately to ensure this consistency, regardless of fluctuating circumstances or motivation? Remember that consistency's transformative power emerges gradually rather than immediately. The most valuable results often appear only after sustained implementation has continued beyond the point where most would abandon their efforts. This delayed gratification explains why consistency remains rare despite its unmatched effectiveness. The investment precedes the return by a substantial margin. Enhance your consistency through strategic preparation for predictable challenges. Identify specific circumstances most likely to disrupt your commitment: travel, illness, deadline pressure, emotional fluctuation. And develop contingency protocols that maintain momentum despite these disruptions. These preparations might include modified versions of your commitment, adaptable to challenging circumstances, environmental adjustments that preserve capability during disruption, or recovery protocols that quickly restore momentum following inevitable interruptions. Which aspects of your aspirational identity have suffered most from inconsistent implementation? What specific systems could you establish immediately to ensure disciplined consistency regardless of circumstantial challenges? Furthermore, it is vital to explore aligning personal growth with meaningful impact. Have you observed that truly fulfilled individuals connect their personal development to purposes larger than themselves? This pattern reveals a profound truth. Lasting satisfaction emerges not through self-focused achievement, but through meaningful contribution, using your developing capabilities to address needs beyond your immediate interests, while creating value that outlasts your direct involvement. Many pursue personal development primarily as a means of self-enhancement, seeking skills, knowledge, and capabilities that increase their status, security, or satisfaction without substantial consideration of the impact these developing attributes might create for others. This self-focused orientation often produces capability without fulfillment, increasing what you can accomplish while limiting what you actually enjoy. You transform this dynamic by deliberately connecting your development to meaningful contribution, identifying specific ways your evolving capabilities could address authentic needs within your relationships, organization, community, or society. This contribution-focused approach accelerates your growth while simultaneously enhancing its fulfillment potential, creating a sustainable development path that reinforces itself through the satisfaction generated by meaningful impact. Begin implementing this orientation by identifying the specific capabilities you're currently developing and exploring how each might address meaningful needs beyond your personal advancement. Perhaps your analytical skills could help nonprofit organizations optimize their impact. Your communication abilities could amplify important but overlooked perspectives. Your technical capabilities could reduce barriers for underserved populations, or your leadership capacity could develop potential in others currently lacking adequate guidance. Australian architect Margaret Wilson developed exceptional design capability while advancing through prestigious firms to increasingly prominent projects. Despite professional recognition, Wilson experienced growing dissatisfaction until encountering a rural community whose inadequate public facilities limited educational opportunities. Rather than continuing her commercially lucrative trajectory, Wilson redirected her architectural expertise toward developing innovative, cost-effective designs for educational facilities in resource-constrained environments. This purpose-driven application of her capabilities not only enhanced her professional fulfillment, but accelerated her creative development beyond what her previous commercially geared work had produced, ultimately establishing Wilson among the most innovative educational facility designers of her generation. How specifically could your developing capabilities address meaningful needs beyond your personal advancement? Which skills or attributes are you currently developing primarily for self-enhancement rather than contribution? What authentic needs exist within your sphere of influence that your aspirational identity would be uniquely positioned to address? Remember that contribution-oriented development doesn't require dramatic career changes or financial sacrifice. It simply aligns your growth trajectory with opportunities to create meaningful impact through existing roles and relationships. This alignment often begins through small adjustments in focus and application, rather than wholesale reinvention of your life direction. Enhance your contribution orientation by regularly exposing yourself to perspectives and needs beyond your typical environment. This expanded awareness might come through volunteering with diverse populations, engaging with thought leaders addressing significant challenges, researching overlooked problems within your field of expertise, or simply having curious conversations with individuals navigating circumstances different from your own. What specific adjustment could you make immediately that would more directly connect your personal development to meaningful contribution? Which capability central to your aspirational identity could create the most significant positive impact if deliberately directed toward others' needs? Building on experiences, we must learn to convert experience into wisdom. Have you recognized that extraordinary individuals extract disproportionate growth from ordinary experiences? This pattern reveals a crucial distinction. Significant development stems not from what happens to you, but from how systematically you convert those experiences into actionable wisdom. While many accumulate experience, few transform them into lasting capability through deliberate reflection and application. Most approach life primarily as consumers of experience, seeking novel situations, information, and interactions without establishing processes to extract their developmental potential. This passive approach guarantees limited growth, regardless of experiences encountered, because wisdom emerges not through exposure alone, but through systematic processing of that exposure into applicable insight. You maximize your development by establishing deliberate practices that transform your daily experiences, both successes and setbacks, into lasting wisdom that enhances your capability. These practices might include structured reflection routines, systematic documentation of insights, intentional experimentation with applying lessons across contexts, and regular review of previous learning to identify emerging patterns. Begin implementing transformative learning by establishing a daily reflection practice that examines your most significant experiences through specific developmental questions. What specific capabilities did this experience test or develop? What assumptions were confirmed or challenged? What patterns connect this experience to previous situations? What specific adjustments would enhance your effectiveness in similar future circumstances? Document these reflections in a format that facilitates regular review and application. Canadian business leader Thomas Reynolds advanced through management positions while demonstrating solid decision-making capability. Despite his competence, Reynolds noticed certain colleagues progressing more rapidly despite similar experience levels. Upon investigation, he discovered these high-performing peers maintained systematic learning practices he had never considered, particularly daily documentation of decision factors, outcomes, and insights, rather than simply moving to the next challenge once current issues resolved. Reynolds implemented this approach, dedicating 30 minutes daily to analyzing his most significant decisions and extracting specific principles applicable to future situations. Within 14 months, this practice had dramatically enhanced his decision quality and response time, ultimately accelerating his advancement beyond peers who possessed greater initial experience. How systematically do you currently extract wisdom from your daily experiences? What valuable insights from recent challenges or successes have you failed to capture and apply? What specific learning practices could you implement immediately to maximize growth from your existing experiences? Remember that transformative learning requires both structured reflection and deliberate application. Neither component alone produces optimal development. Without reflection, experiences remain isolated events rather than developmental resources. Without application, insights remain theoretical rather than incorporated into your operational capability. Enhance your learning effectiveness by periodically reviewing accumulated insights to identify emerging patterns invisible within individual experiences. These meta-level observations often generate breakthrough realizations that dramatically accelerate your development by revealing fundamental principles applicable across diverse situations, rather than context-specific tactics, useful only in limited circumstances. What specific reflection practice could you implement immediately to extract maximum growth from your daily experiences? Which recent challenge contained valuable wisdom you've not yet fully captured and applied? And key to the lifelong journey is embracing perpetual development. Have you observed that extraordinary individuals never reach a fixed destination, but instead maintain perpetual growth throughout their lives? This pattern reveals a fundamental orientation viewing personal development not as a finite process culminating in arrival, but as an endless opportunity for expansion regardless of current achievement level. This perspective explains why certain individuals continue evolving decades beyond the point where most peers plateau into comfortable competence. Many approach personal development with an implicit arrival mentality, believing they'll eventually reach a level where further growth becomes unnecessary or impossible. This orientation inevitably creates developmental plateaus, regardless of potential, because meaningful growth requires constantly expanding boundaries, rather than maintaining current capability, regardless of how impressive those capabilities might appear. You sustain lifelong development by embracing the paradox of perpetual apprenticeship alongside growing mastery, maintaining simultaneous confidence in your current capabilities while nurturing insatiable curiosity about their expansion. This orientation finds expression through regular reassessment of your aspirational identity, deliberate exploration beyond your current domains of competence, and consistent rejection of complacency, regardless of external validation or achievement. Begin implementing this approach by identifying aspects of your current development that have stabilized into comfortable competence rather than continuing evolution. These plateaus might appear in professional skills, relationship patterns, intellectual frameworks, creative expression, or personal discipline. For each identified area, establish specific expansion initiatives that deliberately stretch beyond current capability through new challenges, perspectives, or applications. English physicist William Harrington established himself among the leading researchers in his specialized field, receiving prestigious recognition for contributions that significantly advanced theoretical understanding. Despite this established position, Harrington noticed his innovative thinking gradually conforming to increasingly narrow patterns defined by his previous success. Rather than settling into this comfortable expertise, Harrington deliberately disrupted his developmental trajectory, spending a sabbatical year studying disciplines entirely outside his field, establishing collaborative relationships with researchers, using radically different methodologies, and systematically challenging his most fundamental assumptions. This deliberate recommitment to evolution initially diminished his productivity, but ultimately generated breakthrough insights, connecting previously separate theoretical domains, establishing Harrington's most significant contributions decades after most peers had ceased meaningful innovation. Which aspects of your development have stabilized into comfortable competence rather than continuing evolution? What specific expansion initiatives could you implement immediately to disrupt potential plateaus? How deliberately do you seek challenges beyond your current capabilities rather than opportunities to demonstrate existing strengths? Remember that continuous evolution requires balancing confidence with humility, maintaining faith in your developed capabilities while simultaneously recognizing their inevitable limitations. This paradoxical orientation prevents both insecurity that inhibits effective application of current skills and complacency that prevents their ongoing expansion. Enhance your evolutionary capacity by periodically revisiting foundational practices within domains where you've developed significant expertise. This return to fundamentals with your expanded awareness often reveals overlooked dimensions and refinement opportunities invisible during initial skill development, preventing the subtle erosion of fundamentals that frequently accompanies advanced specialization. What specific domain of current competence would benefit most from deliberate expansion beyond comfortable mastery? What foundational practice, if revisited with your current awareness, might reveal overlooked dimensions for further refinement? And perhaps most crucially, is mastering your internal environment. Have you noticed that exceptional individuals maintain remarkable control over their mental and emotional states regardless of external circumstances? While most allow their internal condition to be dictated by external events, these rare individuals have discovered a crucial truth. Achievement in any domain depends less on controlling circumstances than on mastering your response to those circumstances through deliberate mental management. Many devote extensive energy toward manipulating external conditions while neglecting the internal environment that ultimately determines their experience and effectiveness. This misplaced focus virtually guarantees limited results regardless of external success, because fulfillment and performance emerge primarily from internal factors, largely independent of circumstantial conditions. You transform your trajectory by developing systematic practices for mental management, deliberately cultivating internal states conducive to your aspirational identity, regardless of external triggers. These practices might include cognitive reframing techniques that extract opportunity from adversity, attention management disciplines that direct focus toward productive domains, emotional regulation, strategies that maintain optimal performance states, and perspective practices that consistently align your perception with your highest values. Begin implementing mental management by identifying specific thought patterns that currently limit your expression of your aspirational identity. These might include catastrophic projections that generate unnecessary anxiety, self-limiting beliefs that restrict your perceived capabilities, comparative thinking that diminishes your unique contribution or present moment, dissatisfaction that prevents appreciation of progress already achieved. For each identified pattern, develop a specific intervention strategy that redirects your mental activity toward more productive channels. Canadian tennis champion Robert Mitchell demonstrated exceptional technical capability while experiencing inconsistent tournament performance due to emotional volatility following inevitable competitive setbacks. Despite intensive physical training, Mitchell's results fluctuated dramatically based on early match momentum. Following a particularly devastating loss, Mitchell redirected his development focus, maintaining his physical training while implementing an unprecedented mental management protocol, including pre-match visualization between point reset routines and post-match mental review processes. For 9 months, Mitchell dedicated equal time to mental and physical development, often appearing to practice while physically motionless as he rehearsed mental protocols. This deliberate approach to internal management transformed not only his competitive consistency, but his experience of competition itself, ultimately elevating him among the most mentally resilient competitors of his era. How effectively do you currently manage your internal environment? What specific thought patterns most frequently prevent you from embodying your aspirational identity? Which aspects of your mental management attention? Emotional regulation, perspective, maintenance, or self-narrative would most benefit from immediate enhancement. Remember that mental management doesn't require eliminating negative thoughts or uncomfortable emotions, an impossible standard that creates additional stress, but rather developing systematic responses to these inevitable experiences that prevent their unnecessary amplification or prolonged impact. This approach acknowledges the full range of human mental experience while establishing greater influence over its duration and impact. Enhance your mental management through regular practice periods, specifically dedicated to internal development rather than relying exclusively on real-time application during challenging circumstances. Just as physical capabilities develop primarily during dedicated training sessions, rather than competitive performance, mental management skills strengthen most effectively through deliberate practice in controlled conditions before deployment in high-stakes situations. What specific mental management practice could you implement immediately to enhance your alignment with your aspirational identity? Which recurring thought pattern, if effectively redirected, would most significantly accelerate your transformation? This brings us to the necessity of directing attention toward transformation. Have you recognized that extraordinary individuals direct their attention with unusual precision toward factors that accelerate their development while systematically ignoring potential distractions? This pattern reveals a fundamental principle. Your focus functions as the gateway to your transformation, determining which potential influences shape your evolution while filtering countless alternatives that would dilute your developmental trajectory. Most maintain relatively passive attention patterns, allowing external stimuli, social norms, and momentary interest to determine where their mental energy flows without strategic consideration of how these focus patterns affect their development. This unfocused approach virtually guarantees developmental inefficiency, regardless of potential, because attention functions as your scarcest resource in an environment of unlimited potential inputs. You accelerate your transformation by developing systematic practices for attention management, deliberately directing your focus toward inputs, activities, and feedback directly relevant to your aspirational identity, while ruthlessly eliminating exposure to influences that reinforce your current limitations. This approach acknowledges that transformation occurs primarily through sustained attention to developmental stimuli rather than momentary exposure or intellectual understanding. Begin implementing selective focus by conducting a comprehensive audit of your current attention patterns. Track where your mental energy flows during typical days. Conversations that capture your interest. Information sources. You consume activities that absorb your attention and thought patterns that occupy your reflection time. Compare these actual patterns with ideal focus distribution that would most efficiently develop your aspirational identity. Then implement specific adjustments to align your actual attention with this developmental ideal. Resilient entrepreneur Carlos Mendez maintained modest business success while frequently expressing frustration about limited business growth despite working extensive hours. Upon careful examination, Mendez discovered that despite his genuine commitment, his daily attention remained fragmented across countless operational details, with minimal focus on strategic growth activities. Rather than continuing this dispersed pattern, Mendez implemented radical focus discipline, restricting his attention exclusively to 3 high-leverage activities directly connected to market expansion, while systematically eliminating or delegating all other business functions regardless of their apparent importance. For 4 months, this approach generated significant organizational friction as established routines adjusted to his transformed focus pattern. However, this selective attention ultimately produced breakthrough market opportunities that had remained invisible within his previous fragmented awareness, establishing Mendez among the most successful business leaders in his region. How strategically do you currently direct your attention? What percentage of your daily mental energy flows toward inputs directly relevant to your aspirational identity versus maintenance of your current capabilities or patterns? Which potential developmental influences have remained underutilized due to attention directed elsewhere? Remember that selective focus requires both deliberate direction toward high-value inputs and systematic elimination of low-value distractions. Most attention management efforts fail not through insufficient exposure to developmental stimuli, but through inadequate protection from competing influences that prevent sustained engagement with these growth-producing inputs. Enhance your focus effectiveness through environmental design that reduces dependence on willpower, creating physical and digital spaces that naturally direct attention toward developmental priorities while minimizing exposure to potential distractions. These environmental adjustments might include communication boundaries that protect deep focus periods, physical arrangements that increase exposure to developmental cues, or technological modifications that eliminate scheduling structures that prioritize high-leverage activities when your attention resources function optimally. What specific focus adjustment could you implement immediately to accelerate your transformation toward your aspirational identity? Which current attention pattern, if redirected, would most significantly enhance your developmental efficiency? Finally, a discussion on mastering developmental timing. Have you observed that exceptional individuals maintain unusual equanimity regarding their developmental timeline, neither rushing processes that require maturation nor delaying action when opportunity appears? This pattern reveals a sophisticated understanding. Transformation operates according to natural principles that cannot be circumvented through impatience, yet require decisive action at critical junctures. This strategic patience explains why certain individuals achieve extraordinary outcomes while avoiding both the burnout of constant urgency and the stagnation of perpetual delay. Many approach their development with distorted timing expectations, either demanding immediate results from processes that inherently require sustained investment or postponing decisive action through endless preparation when immediate implementation would accelerate growth. These timing misconceptions virtually guarantee developmental inefficiency regardless of effort invested, because transformation follows natural sequences that function optimally, neither through artificial acceleration nor unnecessary delay. You optimize your development through cultivating strategic patience, deliberately aligning your timing expectations and actions with the natural maturation sequences of your desired capability. This approach requires distinguishing between growth processes that genuinely benefit from extended development periods versus situations where immediate action, despite imperfect conditions, would generate essential feedback unavailable through continued preparation. Begin implementing strategic patience by identifying specific aspects of your development currently suffering from timing misalignment. These might include capabilities you're attempting to force before necessary foundations have developed, opportunities you're postponing through excessive preparation, progress you're failing to recognize due to unrealistic timeline expectations or developmental plateaus you're misinterpreting as permanent limitations rather than necessary integration periods preceding breakthrough. Japanese martial artist Kenji Tanaka demonstrated remarkable technical proficiency while experiencing frustration regarding his competitive performance relative to less disciplined peers. Despite rigorous training, Tanaka noticed certain capabilities remained elusive, regardless of practice intensity. Following guidance from an elderly master, Tanaka restructured his approach, maintaining technical development while implementing a maturation mindset that recognized certain capabilities emerge not through intensified effort, but through integrated development, requiring specific sequences and maturation periods. For 11 months, this approach sometimes appeared to produce less immediate progress than his previously urgent methodology, occasionally generating doubt about its effectiveness. However, this strategic patience ultimately developed remarkable capability that had remained inaccessible through his former approach, establishing Tanaka among the most respected practitioners of his generation. Which aspects of your development are you currently attempting to force before their natural maturation sequence? What opportunities might you be postponing through unnecessary preparation when immediate action would generate essential feedback? How realistic are your timeline expectations regarding your most significant developmental objectives? Remember that strategic patience doesn't imply passive waiting, but rather appropriate timing, recognizing when persistence requires maintaining steady investment versus when breakthrough demands immediate decisive action despite uncertainty. This nuanced discernment develops primarily through careful observation of natural developmental patterns within yourself and others pursuing similar transformations. Enhance your timing discernment through regular assessment of your developmental trajectory, identifying which capabilities are currently experiencing rapid expansion versus consolidation phases, requiring integration before further acceleration. This awareness prevents the common mistake of applying acceleration pressure during natural consolidation periods while leveraging momentum during expansion phases when additional investment produces disproportionate results. What aspect of your development currently requires extended maturation rather than intensified effort? Which opportunity, if seized immediately despite imperfect conditions, would generate essential feedback, unavailable through continued preparation? Finally, the essence of achievement lies in generating unique value through integration. Have you recognized that history's most extraordinary contributors often distinguish themselves not through creating entirely new elements, but through unprecedented combinations of existing components? This pattern reveals a profound insight. Transformative value frequently emerges through creative synthesis, connecting previously separate domains, perspectives, or capabilities in combinations others haven't explored. This integrative approach explains how certain individuals generate remarkable contributions despite working with fundamentally the same raw materials available to countless others. Many approach their development primarily through accumulation, gathering increasingly specialized knowledge, skills, or experience within established domains, without deliberately exploring potential connections across these boundaries. This narrow specialization inevitably limits potential contribution regardless of expertise depth, because the most significant opportunities for distinctive value often exist at the intersections between established categories rather than their centers. You enhance your unique contribution through developing systematic practices for creative synthesis, deliberately exploring potential connections between your diverse knowledge domains, skill sets, perspectives, and experiences. Many orient their development primarily toward immediate recognition, pursuing achievements visible within conventional timeframes and validated through established metrics. What adjustments to your current focus would most directly enhance your potential for lasting influence? Whatever form your potential legacy might take, develop them with deliberate attention to their sustainability beyond your active involvement. So, are you ready to live the extraordinary life you were meant for? The journey begins now with you living as your future self today.